In this jdbc tutorial, I'm going to extend what we have discussed in the previous tutorials with data source, connection pool, and prepared statement. And we will also insert some records into the MySQL database. So this assumes that you have already gone through the other video tutorials that cover installing Maven, Eclipse, Java, and also MySQL. So once you have got all these set up, MySQL, Eclipse, Java, and Maven, then you can proceed with this particular tutorial. Firstly, I'm going to go to the server and then I'm going to start the MySQL server. So we have already seen the MySQL server. You can start it with MySQL which is a daemon -- consoles, and we have already set up one database which is called learn Java DB and one table under that which is called the account. So I'm going to go here to start MySQL daemon -- console. So this should start the MySQL database on port number 3306. And if you're going to go to another client and see what's in that, I have to do MySQL -u for user. I've already set up a user called user123 and -p for password. When it's prompted for the password, it is pwd123, which I have already set up. Now if I have to say use learn Java DB, so that will switch to that particular database. Then I can do select star from account, and then with a semicolon, this will tell you all the entries. So we got 3 records now with IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9. So this is all out of the way now. Now let's go into the first step. So data source. So basically initially we used a driver manager to connect to the database. But when you run in Java Enterprise Edition applications and writing RESTful web services and so on, we'll be making use of something called a data source. So a data source, you can configure it on Tomcat, WebSphere application server, any application server used that allows you to configure that. And via JNDI, you can look up that connection pool and then you can start connecting it. But in this tutorial, to keep things simpler, we're going to write a standalone Java application which uses the concept of data source. So MySQL comes with the data source API. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that MySQL data source API initially, and then we will move it to Apache Commons connection pool. So Apache Commons is another library that gives you a connection pool. And then we'll move to prepared statements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this here, Control C, and then go to the code that we used in the previous tutorials, which is called simple persistence. And I've already created different packages, one for DAO, one for main, one for model, one for util. And inside the util, I created a class called connection util class. So these all applying one of the object-oriented principles called the single responsibility principle. So when you build classes, you need to write cohesive classes. That means that particular class does only one thing. So if you want to go and make changes and modifications, it's much easier to do that. You can easily write a class that does the utility, that does the model bit, that will even do the data access bit. But once you start putting everything in, then testing becomes harder, maintenance becomes harder, and if you change one thing, another thing will start to break and so on. So when you apply the single responsibility principle, because the connection util that we built is only responsible for connecting to the database and returning a connection, it just focuses on one thing. So that's its responsibility. So here what we are going to do is, here we hard coded all those values, which is not another good coding practice. So we need to externalize this to another properties file. So first I'll go here and copy these properties. So here there's a properties here. So Control C. These properties define the password, username, the URL, and the driver, etc. in the properties file. So if anything you have to change, you only just change this file. I'm going back to my code here, and all in Maven structure, the properties files will go into the folder called source main resources. So when we created the empty archetype, we didn't have the source main resources folder. So all I do is select on the simple hyphen persistence, right click on it and say new, and there's an option called source folder. So in the source folder, I'm going to say src source main / resources, and then say finish. And inside that, I'm going to right click on it and say new file, and I'm going to call it db for database.properties. So it's a simple db.properties file, and then I'm going to paste the properties in here. So basically, what are these properties? So it says mysql underscore db underscore driver class. This is the name of the driver class is going to use. mysql db.url. This is the name of the URL. So how do we connect the local host and port number, this, and also the database name, and obviously the username and the password. So that's done. Next, we are going to modify the connection util to use a data source. Here we use a driver manager to get the connection. Now we're going to use a data source. So I'm going to go to my code here, click on this copy button, and it allows you to Control C. It'll select everything. You do a Control C, come back here. I'm going to do a Control A and a Control V. So basically, I've done the connection util. Now your connection util is changed. No other class is now changed because it's all using the single responsibility. So this is a responsibility to get the connection, and it's been modified, and every other part of the code can work as it is. So now we'll give this a test. So I'm going to select my, inside the main, I have the jdbc example, right click on it, run as Java application. That's it. It has run, and it gives me the same output, whatever is in the database. Record 1, this is record 2, so 1, 2, 3 ID, 4, 5, 6, and if I scroll to a right a bit, 7, 8, 9. So this bit is good. So now there's a problem with this class because it is tightly coupling to this particular data source class object, which is belong to MySQL. So if I want to switch to Oracle or Sybase or whatever, then I have to come and change all these code. So we will go and improve this further. So what we have is called there's a basic data source class that is provided by the Apache Commons library. So the first step is what we need to do is I need to come here and copy this dependency, which is org Apache Commons dbcp2. This is a database connection pool, and this is a version. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go to my pom.xml file. So if you look at the pom.xml file here, I can see and also I'm going to drill down to the Maven. So at the moment we only got the MySQL connector driver. So I'm going to go to the pom.xml file, and below the driver I'm going to put this Apache Commons connection pool. So when you're writing industrial strength Java application, you'll be using a lot of the Apache libraries. So one of the software development tenets is to never reinvent the wheel, because writing your own connection pool or whatever is not a trivial task. If there's already a library out there which is tried and tested, you might as well use it. So it saves you time and also is properly tested. So I've gone and added this, and as soon as I add this, now if I go and see, it has brought in some other dependencies. So Commons dbcp, this is the one, the connection pool we are going to use. So this is basically a data source that comes with the connection pool, and because Maven uses the transitive dependency, this depends on other files, so it's gone and brought in the other files, other jar files as well. So this is done. Now we have to go and change the connection util again to make use of this new this new jar library, this connection pool library. So I'm going to select this new one. It is here. So it's going to use a basic data source from the org Apache Commons library. So I'm going to copy this, Control C, and then go to our DB connection util. I'm going to do a Control A to select it and Control V to override that. And we'll just look at that, what it is doing. So obviously it's a connection util. Here I'm declaring the basic data source outside, because you'll set up a connection data source. I've already mentioned in one of the previous tutorials, creating connections, destroying it, reusing it, and so on. So when you have a big application, you might have 30 or 40 concurrent users accessing your system. So you need to fork out maybe 30 connections for your database, and then creating a connection and destroying it every time is an expensive operation. So connection pool is something you can say, okay, I want to have a pool of 30 connections. And once you start using it, after you finish with it, you put the connection back into the pool. You don't destroy the connection and recreate it, and then you'll reuse it again. Similar stuff you'll be using when you're using threads. These are all expensive resources. You create a pool of threads, you use them and put it back into the pool. You don't try to initialize or create it every time. So define the basic data source outside. I'm marking this as a synchronizer because when two threads try to access it, it will be blocked and only one thread can get in. The reason being, only if the data source is null the first time, I'm initializing the data source, and then every other time you come in, you just get a connection. This can be further improved. You don't have to really synchronize the whole method, but let's keep it simple. So it comes in, it reads the it initializes a properties class, and then it reads the file db.properties, because db.properties will be in the class path. Anything in the source main resources will automatically go to the class path, and load whatever is in that into the properties. So it will be loading as name value pairs. So properties will be having a name and a value. So we looked at here, we got a name and a value. So we can access it via the name and the value. And then we initialize as a new basic data source. So this will only happen once when the data source is null. And then we are setting basic data source needs a driver name, URL, username, everything needs to be set. So what we are doing is we are reading from these properties by their name and then setting it to the data source. And here I've just taken a shortcut and I've set it directly, because I said this is a connection pool. You need to initialize the pool to a certain number of connections. So when the application starts, it automatically creates 10 connections, for example, in this case. And also you can say, and then as the number of users increases, say if you have 15 concurrent users accessing your application, you need 15 connections. So it will go all the way up to 20, maximum 20 connections. And if you have 25 users, then 5 users have to wait for the other connection to be returned back to the pool. So ideally, this also needs to be configured in the database.properties file. So I can add 2 more variables called minimum initialize with the initial size and the maximum size or whatever. Then I should be reading it via that. But I have just hard coded it for the time being. And then outside of here, from the data source, I'm saying get me a connection. So now let's see how this behaves differently to the other one. So now I'm ready to run this again. So I'm going to run this jdbc example or run. Here you can see is a little bit of warning, like because we are not using any SSL or anything like that. See, you got 10 warnings because it's trying to create 10 connections and it's already in the pool. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11, because this is for this connection here. So already now we can go to the database and it can get the value back. And also we have a connection of pool of connections, so that we can, if we have multiple users or multiple threads accessing it, it can fork out more connections from the pool. So now we have done the connection pool, we have done the data source. It's basically the basic data source. We are using the standalone data source with the connection pool. But if you are using via the Tomcat application or server or something, you don't have to write all these code. You will provide all these configuration, that URL, minimum, maximum connections, everything via the Tomcat's configuration file. And then you'll be exposing that as a JNDI name and then in your application you will be doing a JNDR lookup that will get you a connection pool, and then you can get the connections from that data source. So we have done that, we have tested it. So now we are ready to move on to the next one. So next one is we are going to do a prepared statement. So far we have only one method, which is called get accounts. Let's create another method into the DAO interface, and we will save a new account into the database. So first step, so now we have easily, this is again the single responsible principle. So we have done the connection bit, we made some changes. Now we're going to come to the data access, how the data is accessed. So this is based on the use case. You can delete, you can perform all kind of CRUD operations. So to the interface, basically we're going to add a new method called boolean save account and pass an account Java object. So we can easily create a Java object, account is equal to new account, set the ID values, and then pass it to the DAO layer, and then use the SQL insert query to insert it into the MySQL database. So I'm going to copy this, Control C, and I'm going to go into my DAO class, into the interface, and then I'm going to do Control A and Control V. So the new method is there now. Save account will return a boolean. If it succeeds, it says true. If it fails, it says false or whatever. So, and it takes an account model object as an argument to save. Now you will notice, because we have modified the interface, the implementation is going to complain. There's a new method now I don't have an implementation for. So see, there's a red color cross in there that's saying account impl is not happy, because if you hover over the red, it says the type account DAO implement must implement the inherited abstract method, because we are implementing an account DAO. So account DAO is an interface, and whatever the interface defines, we need to implement those implementations. So what I'm going to go is now going to my implementation, copy this, Control C, and go to my account DAO implementation. I'm going to do a Control or delete and Control V. So now we got a save account method as well. Now it says override because it's overriding the interface. So what it is doing is it takes an account object. So whichever the method, we'll see that later, the main method will create this new account, pass the values to it, and it's going to create a prepared statement. So even though in the previous tutorial we use statement, always prefer to use a prepared statement. The reason being, prepared statement caches the query plan. So when you run the same query repeatedly again and again, which is more efficient. And secondly, it is safer against the SQL injection attack. So this is one of the security threats, is that you can do an SQL injection attack. In the SQL, I think, or in the security interview questions and answers, I've covered SQL injection attack if you are preparing from an interview perspective. But then here, so all we're doing is creating a prepared statement, and I'm using a connection util that we have already modified with the Apache Commons connection pool. From that, within that, get a connection. Once you get a connection, you call a method called prepare statement, and here the prepared statement I am passing is insert into account value blah blah, because there are 3 question marks, because the account object on an account table got 3 fields: ID, name, and the balance. So 3 question marks. And then what I'm doing is I'm setting those prepared statement, the question mark values. So 1 is for the first question mark, 2 is for the second question mark, 3 is, and I'm getting those values out of the account object. We have already set the account object. So account.getID will go into the ID field. Account.getName will go into the name field. Account.getBalance will go into the balance field. And then we are executing the prepared statement.execute. And then, as usual, finally you got to come in, and it's essential that to prevent any resource leaks, you need to close all your statement, your connection. So statement is where you're passing your SQL query through, and connection is where you're opening a connection or a path or a road to your SQL server that we are already running it here. So if you want to look at it diagrammatically, this is the Java layer. From the Java layer, we are using jdbc and the MySQL driver, and we are connecting to the MySQL database, and we are saving, inserting records, we are reading records, and so on. So this is all done. Now the next thing we need to do is something has to call the save account, because this is not the area we bootstrap into. So it is the main method that we had to change. So we'll go to here. I'll look at the main method, and then here, see, we are creating an account object, new account, setting a value called 999, and set name is Samuel JJ, and big decimal value of 235. So before we do an insert, here I'm going to show we only got 3 records at the moment. We don't have the record ID 999, which is a new one, which is from the Java layer. We're going to insert it into the database. So I'm going to copy this here, Control C, and I'm going to paste it into my main method. So I'm going to the main method again, jdbc main example. I'm going to do a Control A and a Control V. So what we are doing is we are running a day thing. We are getting all the accounts, printing it out. Then we are creating a new account, which is a model, setting all those values with the setter method. So this is a POJO. So this POJO got set ID, set name, set balance methods. You are supplying those values. Then on the DAO object, we already got the DAO object. We are calling a save account method, which knows how to go to the database and then insert it into the database. And then we are doing another select to see this record has been inserted. That means we are reading it again from the database. So this is all done now. We are ready to run this and test it. So I'm going to go jdbc example, run as Java application. Here you will see it got twice. So first time it will be without the additional record that we added. So if you look at it, it's shorter. And the second one is we got the ID 999, name Samuel JJ, and balance is whatever the balance we have passed here. So now if I go in here, so this is another accuracy issue. So because it's going into so many decimal places, so if you're using a float, so it's always better to use something like a big decimal. And then also on the database side, when I set up the table, you can set up 6,2. That means only to the 2 decimal places precision it will maintain it. But when I set it up as a float in the database, I didn't mention the precision, so it's gone all the way up to so many digits. Now if I go to my client again, I'm just going to do select star from account. That's my table, and put a semicolon. So now you can see the 4th record 99999. Because in this table I haven't set up any primary keys, foreign keys, and things like that, if I add another one, it's going to go 9999 again. So it's going to go create duplicates and triplicates and so on. So that's why it's important in here, when you set up your table, you got to set up a primary key, and if there's already an ID there with the 999, it won't insert another record. So that's all for this tutorial. So we looked at data source, connection pooling, and prepared statements to insert records into the MySQL database. So everything we have discussed here will be available via the link at the bottom. It takes you through the code, so you can copy and paste it into your own Eclipse and then practice.